is an incredible example, an archetype of the kind of person who grew up in a position of relative prosperity and high education, but who could have advanced herself individually in any way she wanted to, but decided to give her life and commit to the struggle for social justice and for the human rights of others, especially women and workers. She came to Pittsburgh in 1907. She had graduated from Vassar and a master's in sociology from NYU, or from Columbia, and then was the second ranked person in her law school class at NYU, New York University. She came to do what was envisioned as a couple of months statistical analysis of workplace deaths, but when she came and found out how horrific it was that 526 people had been killed in industrial accidents in 1 year in one county, and that was without a major mine explosion. She came over 18 months. She worked and did the greatest work, in my opinion, of worker health and safety that's been done in this country. She not only went out and interviewed workers who had witnessed the accidents, and interrogated managers, but she also went and talked to families. Over 100 families she interviewed to assess the impact of the loss of the breadwinner on the family. And the combination of intellectual rigor and training with human compassion is something that really makes Crystal Eastman stand out as one of the great heroes of both the women's movement and the labor movement. And we felt for a long time that she deserved to be recognized, which we finally did with a marker. Her study showed several very important things. One is there's a truism which I encountered as a member of the Governor's Safety Council in my time at IUP, was that 90% of accidents are Joe's fault, the worker's fault, when in fact she documented and investigated and proved that at most 30% of the accidents in Allegheny County in that period could have been ascribed to the worker, but there were all kinds of complications like weather, etc., that she couldn't judge, and may have mitigated even those responsibilities of the worker. And fatigue, working 12-hour days, 7-day weeks, you make mistakes. So she was able to show that it was a systemic problem, that the capitalists, the money people, didn't want to put out money for important health and safety equipment that was necessary, especially machine guarding. She was a leader on machine guarding and its importance, where workers' arms, limbs, fingers, and lives would often be grabbed by these large belts that drove all the machines in a factory off a common power source, and would, if your arm got caught or your sleeve got caught, you could be dragged in and killed. She also showed that the impact of these deaths was horrific on the family, because it was, as she said, it was the breadwinner who was taken away. And so these were often very large families, and the loss of the breadwinner meant that the eldest child had to go to work. Often the eldest several children had to go to work as often in their teenage years. This was the prime driver of one of the prime drivers of child labor was industrial accidents and injuries. And worse than a death, she said, was an injury that debilitated the breadwinner, because not only did you not have the income, but you had another mouth to feed. And she really documented and talked to the women who suffered the consequences of these terrible accidents. She also showed that the rate of accident was no higher among Slavs or Negroes than it was among the white workers, because the mythology had been, well, they're just dumber and it's their fault, and that's why we have so many industrial accidents. And she showed that actually they were slightly below the white workers in terms of serious accidents. So she did incredible path-breaking work that it stands alone because she went beyond, she put it in a context, and she put it in the family and human context, which I've never seen anybody write on accidents the way that she did. She really should be the archetype of how we always do these things, but she really stands as a great example. After Pittsburgh, she got requested by the governor of New York State, Charles Evans Hughes, who becomes later the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, who is on the court and one of the key people, who a Republican, a progressive Republican, who backs the Wagner Act and gives workers their rights. Charles Evans Hughes, as governor of New York, invites Crystal Eastman, and she wrote the first workers' compensation law for the state of New York, and became extremely active in a wide range of the causes around worker safety. When World War I broke out, she immediately, with other feminist activists, she took up the cause of anti-war, went to Holland for the Women's International Peace Group. She was a founder, eventually, of the Women's International for Peace and Freedom, and she signed declarations on behalf of all women that this war was not in the interest of women and family and of human life. After that, she was a writer. She wrote for the masses. She wrote for Liberator magazines. She was a terrific, powerful advocate of free speech and the right of people to say what they wanted to without being thrown in jail, as many people were. She demonstrated with the suffragettes in front of the White House. Alice Ball was a close friend and colleague, and she was a part of that group that demonstrated in front of the White House and were persecuted for it. She became then a founder, a first board member of the American Civil Liberties Union. So her fight continued for free speech. But she was, I think, in many ways, the end of her career is some of the most interesting, because her interest in women's liberation led her to take some very important steps. While she was a fierce suffragette, she said that women will only be truly liberated when reproduction is valued as much as production. That women's labor, bringing children into the world and caring for them, should be compensated in a fair and just way. And that is the way forward and that remains today still very much an issue in terms of women's rights around the globe, is to give some monetary and financial value to one of the most central issue for the survival of the human race. She also, with Alice Pauls and two others, wrote the Equal Rights Amendment, drafted the Equal Rights Amendment. So she ended up dying quite young. I think she was 49, and had lived an incredibly full life. And we were very proud on Universal Day of Human Rights in December of 2010. We unveiled a Pennsylvania State Historical Marker to Crystal Eastman in memory of her incredible work, diligence, and compassion on the work accidents and the law, her great work. And we held a vigil there, and when we put together our brochure on labor history sites, that was one of the most important, because she is somebody that needs to be remembered. And for those who are interested, through the Battle of Homestead, this labor history sites of Pittsburgh region, southwestern Pennsylvania, about 40 major sites of labor history in our area, we will be doing, telling the stories of these sites and making this brochure available.